So, John, we have to be very careful talking about today's topic because here, I got to show you this. I guess I just got to show you this because it's so crazy. Let's see here.
But what you told me makes sense.
Okay, you can see this, right?
I do.
So this is LinkedIn. Right now, we're using this is streaming out. If you're watching this, by the way, it's streaming out to multiple platforms at the same time, and we're going to get into why you need to do that if you want to stream to LinkedIn. But it's streaming to Twitter and YouTube and a couple of Facebook places and LinkedIn, I think, a couple of LinkedIn places, and then John has his own places it goes to because the service we use, if you're a guest, it lets you tack on all of your services and channels around the interwebs to stream out. But LinkedIn Live is by far the most rule-based, interesting one of all. And one of the reasons it's interesting is this fourth bullet down here is avoid talking about how to use LinkedIn on LinkedIn. So I guess they do not want you to do live streams because this is for your live videos. It says up here on top. Like on live streams, don't show people how to use the LinkedIn platform. Now, there's probably a reason for this. I can't think of why it's true, but we have to be very careful. We're not going to talk about how to do things on LinkedIn in this stream today. In fact, we're going to try to steer away from all of the features of LinkedIn Live. We're only going to discuss them in the context of, in case there's like LinkedIn police or an algorithm that scans these. We're going to talk about LinkedIn Live as a webinar alternative platform and when it's good for that and what its advantages are over those platforms. And by that, I mean the go-to webinars, the Zoom webinars, the
Yeah.
demos, Webinar Jam, Webinar Ninja. There's a billion of them, right?
There's
Blue Jean, all of those.
tons of them.
So, but we are going to be kind of careful because we can't talk about how to use LinkedIn too much on LinkedIn. I guess they want you to go to YouTube to look up a video on how to use LinkedIn. So there you go. Okay, so let's stop sharing this for now. Okay, so everyone knows what a webinar is. It's either one person or several people. Sometimes there's a host, and sometimes there's just a solo person doing the whole thing. Sometimes there's a host and a guest, and the host brings it on and introduces the guest. The guest does the bulk of the content, hands it back to the host, and then deals with a Q&A and all that kind of stuff. Now, webinar platforms have evolved over the last few years to add a bunch of features that some people absolutely depend on, some businesses absolutely depend on, and most people will never ever use. And on the flip side of that, they have some inherent disadvantages. So I just wanted to go through, John, and you just chime in when you want, and we're
Sure.
going to get to the company page part in just a second. But we're for the most part, we're going to be talking about whether you're going to do a webinar similar to what this is on LinkedIn right now at this very moment, which is an event gets created and then people talk and provide information. And in this case, we're going to be talking about doing it from a company page and not your own personal LinkedIn page. You can do it on your own personal LinkedIn page. And that's what we've been using right up until today, actually. It's only since last week that we've been able to do it through a company page on LinkedIn instead of just a personal page on LinkedIn. And we're going to get to that in just a second. But obviously, John, the number one advantage, and there are two gigantic advantages to using LinkedIn as a webinar platform. The number one advantage is it costs absolutely nothing.
Very true.
Or, I mean, you can correct me. As far as I know, there is not like a pro version, an ultimate version, a platinum version of LinkedIn Live that you pay for,
Well,
or you get some kind of feature that other people don't get for free.
it's very true.
Okay, fair enough. I thought that was true. I wanted to be sure.
Yep.
And you're the person I usually ask these questions about Sales Navigator and LinkedIn and so on. The other big advantage of using LinkedIn as your platform, I guess there are three really. The second one is that there's no audience limit. How most pricing is done if you sign up for Zoom webinar or GoToWebinar or any of the big ones or even the small ones, is there will be different tiered prices, and they typically raise the price based on how many host accounts you want to have, or more commonly, how many people will attend live. So as an example, one of the services that I use with clients is Demio. Now, like there is no perfect webinar service, by the way. They're not None of them are good at everything. If so, you sort of like pick the thing that's most important to you, and then you sort of put up with the rest, or you work around it somehow. Demio's number one advantage that I found is that it'll stream in 1080p, and that video stream is rock solid. Never, ever, ever had a problem with the video stream and people not being able to see what the guest or the host was saying or showing.
which
So
is
it's
huge.
rock solid in that. What's that, John?
Which is huge.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, if they can't do that right, no one cares how good your registration page looked,
No.
or how good your email sequence was, or whether you could connect everything in the back end with Zapier or whatever. It made no difference.
And if you've ever had a webinar go down in the middle of doing a webinar,
Yeah, it's like,
you'll know
you do
how
all that work and you've
bad it
lost it
stinks.
all, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, and we've only ever had, I think, one problem on LinkedIn. To
Yeah.
give LinkedIn its credit, we had one.
Two.
We had a couple videos, a couple
Two.
live streams where the picture was very pixelated a lot of the time, and then we had one where there was just no video at all. It was just audio. Although, as far as we can tell, it's the third-party service we were using, and we'll get into that in the disadvantages for LinkedIn.
Correct.
It was the third-party service we had to use, and not the LinkedIn platform itself. So it's great in that there's no audience limit. Demio will charge you $50 a month if you're on the monthly plan, and that gives you 50 people. Now, a billion people can register for the webinar. There's no limit on that, but only 50 of them can actually attend it live. And
Mhm.
then it's $100 a month if you want 150 people. And it's, I think, $400 a month. I could be wrong on that, Demio. I apologize. To get
Wow.
maybe 500 people. But I mean, there is no webinar platform that has I mean, you really need to be able to sell stuff during a webinar to make up for the money it will cost you to have more than 150 or so people. And most of them, by the way, cap you at 100. I think Zoom has a plan that lets you do 100 or lets you do 400, but that's it.
500.
Is it 500 now?
I have 500.
Okay. So on LinkedIn, there's no limit. Like
Mhm.
a billion people could watch at one time. No one's ever going to watch your webinar as part of a billion person audience. It's just never
And I
going to
was
happen
just
for you. But theoretically, it could, right?
Yeah, and I was gonna add too, sometimes there's special cases like, Tony Robbins did the largest Zoom webinar,
Yeah,
and he had tens of thousands of people on.
right.
So, I mean, there's always exceptions to every rule.
Yeah, they're negotiating on the
Yeah,
back end with Zoom itself in order to like open up
make it
that
work.
many streams, right? Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And now with a LinkedIn company page, and with a LinkedIn company page as opposed to your own personal page, but if your business has its own page on LinkedIn, and it should, then once you get to 150 followers on that page, and that's what we did last week. We let people know on, I think, like Tuesday, that
Hope
we
it
had
is.
for my company page, Way Creative, on LinkedIn. It had 0 followers. I mean, it never paid any attention to it. That said, okay, let's start using LinkedIn Live on a company page. So
Mhm.
we just let everyone know, hey, please like follow this page. And we got 150 people in a couple of days. I think right now it's up to like 175, 180 something. It keeps growing, even though we don't need it
Awesome.
to grow beyond 150. But if you're doing it from your company page, there's a big advantage over doing it from your personal profile. And that is you can have a registration form,
Mhm.
and it will automatically be filled in by people that you invite through LinkedIn. So besides me, you might send people an email and say, hey, we're going to hold a webinar on LinkedIn at this time and date and place. And not that place matters. Click here, it takes you to the page and they can like register for the event itself. But if they're already logged into LinkedIn, which nearly all of them would be, I think LinkedIn puts up a barrier where you have to, but who doesn't have a LinkedIn account? It's like,
Right.
who doesn't have a Facebook account, right? So then it will auto-populate all of the stuff for them. It makes it that much easier, and then it will actually provide those details to you as the event organizer, or at the end of the event, you can download that as a spreadsheet, or you can connect it up with a service like Zapier or Intermat, I think it's called. There's a bunch of these services where
There's a
they
couple
sort
of
of
'em.
like allow you to like plug things together behind the scenes. So you can use Zapier.com or a service like that. That's the one I use is Zapier. And as people register, it will auto populate like a mailing list on MailChimp or something for you. So, or put it in your CRM and HubSpot or whatever it is you're using, Pipedrive.
Right.
And because of that, and those services like Zapier, their whole thing is they connect to thousands of other services. So
Oh, yeah.
no service needs to ever care much about all of the other services it's going to allow connections to. It just needs to allow one to Zapier, one to Intermat or whatever, and then those companies will take care of the other stuff. So now this was a big deal because before, and certainly on a personal page, you can't get the details of the people who signed up. It's just not available to you other than clicking one by one. You also can't communicate with them outside of LinkedIn. You can't send them an email or anything and say, hey, by the way, sorry, we need to cancel, or sorry, we had to reschedule, or hey, thanks for registering for this. If you happen to be interested in this topic, we've got an article over here that we think you might really enjoy before the event happens, or anything like that. You were cut off from all of that, but you can do that if you have a company page and it gets 150 followers. So I highly suggest that, since followers don't really cost anything, you should go and put together your company page, or if you already have one, go ahead and ask people to follow it so that
Mhm.
you can get to that 150 person threshold. Anything beyond 150 doesn't matter, but 150 is the absolute minimum. And of course, we talked about this earlier. Everyone has a LinkedIn account. You have extremely wide reach. When you create an event on LinkedIn, and you're able to sort of keep everything in LinkedIn, which is to say the registration process, the invitation process, the actual viewing process live when it occurs. All of that stuff is done just on the LinkedIn platform. You have a very wide reach. LinkedIn will let you, John, I'm not sure if you happen to know the latest number for this or not. LinkedIn will let you invite, if with enough time, I think everyone in your network. Now you can't do that all
Wouldn't
at once.
surprise me. It
I
wouldn't.
think you either can invite 150 people per week or 1,000 people per week if you have 1,000 contacts on LinkedIn.
I think the other thing too, because we have to use a secondary streaming system
Yeah,
to,
yeah, we're gonna
to
get to the
but
cons in 1 second,
I
and
know
that's
we are. I know we are. But one thing I was going to mention, I, a lot of the other, like Facebook, Instagram. I don't know if YouTube does it as much, but you get punished for using one of those secondary systems. So I do believe that
you
LinkedIn is
mean
the only one that does not punish you for that.
right. I just want to be clear. What you mean in punished is in the SEO ranking, not in like, hey, we're suspending your account because you use live stream.
Correct. A little more than SEO ranking, the actual reach,
Right.
getting
You're
out.
not going to get put in YouTube jail or have your account canceled or something if
Right.
you use StreamYard
Right.
or Restream. That's just
No.
clear, right? So, and the nice part about using LinkedIn Live as opposed to just LinkedIn events, and you may have done a LinkedIn event. What you do is you sort of, hey, we're going to have a thing, and then here's a link to the Zoom webinar registration form, and you actually invite people, and you've all seen this right in your feed or notifications. Such
Mhm.
and such a person has invited you to this event, and you click on that, or you click accept without even going to the page of the event. You can just click accept there. The advantage of LinkedIn Live, once you get it set up instead of just LinkedIn Events generally, is that with LinkedIn Events you're not live streaming through LinkedIn. So there's a webinar service you have to go to and use.
Right.
And a lot of the time you think you've registered for the event because you accepted the invitation to the event on LinkedIn. And no, there's a whole other thing you need to do. But so then you'll get an email or something from LinkedIn saying, "Hey, by the way, your event such and such and such and such is starting, now." And you click into it and you realize like there's nothing going on here. Like it's a link just to the page that describes the event. And then like you look and in really small print, it'll show you a link where you need to go and register for the event on the webinar service so
Oh,
that then you can watch the event. And a lot of people, there's a lot of fall off there. Like they'll accept the invitation
yeah.
that you sent them through LinkedIn, but then like as soon as you put in that little bit of friction, they don't show up. They're not going to go and fill in yet another form unless they really, really want that content.
There's a
With
lot of
LinkedIn
stuff.
Live, you can just invite them, and once they accept it, LinkedIn sends them the same, hey, blah blah blah, your event is going to start, now. They click on the link, and bam, they're right on the LinkedIn page, and you're streaming on the LinkedIn page. It's done.
Hmm.
Now, there are disadvantages, of course, to using LinkedIn Live for a webinar
Yes.
platform. Boy, are there disadvantages. And the first one is you've already mentioned. Unlike webinar services, where usually they're all browser based these days, but some of them, like Zoom or GoToMeeting, actually have software you download. The nice part about Zoom is everyone already has Zoom installed on their machine.
For the
You'd be
most
hard
part.
pressed to find anybody who doesn't have Zoom installed on their machine at this point. And so you can, like, Zoom will Like find the camera you're using and find the microphone, or use the built-in camera and microphone on your laptop or whatever. And like you're just there. There's nothing to do. You
Yep.
paid for Zoom, so you're on Zoom.
You're ready to go.
With LinkedIn Live, you can't do that. You have to use a third-party service like StreamYard or Restream or some other company like that. And depending on which plan you choose, it is not hard to get to a point where you're paying as much for the third-party streaming service. And by the way, I would point out that you can stream live on YouTube, you can stream live on Facebook or Twitter or Twitch or whatever without any third-party service.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no extra cost there at all. But for LinkedIn Live, you have to pay for a third-party service. They do not provide any mechanism where the LinkedIn page can see your camera and hear your microphone and you just stream.
Right.
We happen to use a Restream on this show. It's not necessarily better or worse. It's just for what I wanted and particular things that I wanted, they offered it at a price that other competitors didn't seem to at that time. And then you get into, okay, we're already here. We're going to stay here. So it's fine.
And it's got some nice other advantages.
It's got some nice advantages, but you will have to pay for another service unless you want like branding and stuff from you can get free accounts on Restream, for example, but every time you stream, it's going to have like the Restream logo on the screen. And you probably don't want that if this is a business professional kind of event that you're doing. And so like the cheapest webinar services are going to cost about the same as a paid third-party streaming service, up to like an audience of about 50 people on a webinar service. It's going to cost like $50, and that's approximately what you'll end up paying for the best version of the third-party streaming service. So, beyond that, it doesn't cost anything because you're going to LinkedIn Live and there's no limit on the audience, but it's not free the way that, you'd think it is. And oddly enough, you also can't download the video from LinkedIn. So, John, we've never tried this, but I went and looked it up. Every webinar service records your webinar,
Mm-hmm.
and then so that you can download that video. You can put it up on YouTube, you can put it on Vimeo, you can put it on your own website, you can do whatever. LinkedIn does not provide you with a copy of that recording. It doesn't say you can't have a recording. It says that if you want a recording, since you have to use a third-party service with our service anyway, do it there, because we're not going to give you a copy of it. Even though they have a copy of it, they're not going to give you a copy of it.
That makes sense.
I don't know. Does it?
I think. You're probably going to get it. Honestly, based on what I've seen in the past, you're probably going to get a better recording from one of the third-party streaming softwares anyways.
Maybe. I mean, to me, the simple way around that is you would just simultaneously stream to YouTube. There's no rule that says you can't.
Nope.
And so you would just simultaneously stream it to YouTube, and then you've got a copy of the video right there in case you ever wanted it. Now, LinkedIn Live is for information sharing, and it's for marketing, but it is not for sales. In fact, one of the rules that we just had on the screen there a while ago is you don't sell things during your session. You can't say, so, please go to this link and, click this link and buy my thing. It's, in fact, I would even be hesitant to say, click this link to book a sales demo. I wouldn't even do that if I was at all concerned that I could get into LinkedIn jail, because there is such a thing as LinkedIn jail.
Yeah.
Where they'll suspend your account or kill your account or force you to go through a bunch of hoops and prove that you're a human being, and send them a scan of your driver's license and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's not fun.
So you can't sell anything on LinkedIn. The closest that I think you'd be able to get is to say, if you're interested in additional information about this topic. Oh, what was that noise? Was that someone coming in?
Sounds like it.
Yeah, it's Dr. V.
Hello. Technical difficulties.
Yeah.
I have a new MacBook Pro, and I have none of the USB-C connector.
Yeah. Ports are a thing of the past on Macs now, man. They get down to just one or two.
I have so many lovely cords too. So.
Yeah, all gone.
All gone.
So you can't sell anything during a LinkedIn Live session. I was saying the closest I think I would ever want to get to that without being too radioactive is just to say, if you're interested in details around this, here's a link to a webpage, and the webpage would have a bunch of stuff on it, a form for signing up for a newsletter, maybe a form for getting a demo, maybe something else. But since you'd be using this to on a company page and you're going to have people's emails, I wouldn't even really do that necessarily. I might just send them an after action, after event, or like a wrap up email that had
Mm-hmm.
a link to the video recording, because most people expect to be able to see a video recording. In fact,
Recording
most
again.
people sign up. A lot of people sign up for a webinar not intending to attend live, but to just watch the recording, right? And so I'd send them, and that would probably have the YouTube link where, we simultaneously streamed it, and details around, if you want X or Y, here's how to do it. And again, even then, not very salesy and certainly not aggressive, just sort of informative, and let it go at that.
I think
That's
that's
one
why
of
they
the
always say
trade-offs
for
for
more
this.
information, the little buttons to learn more or for
Yeah.
more information, go here.
And then a lot of people are going to think this is like a weird condition, but LinkedIn requires that your LinkedIn Live video streaming session be live. And people are saying, well, okay, that's normal. Aren't they all live? A lot of webinars are not live
No.
at all. What's happened is you might actually do the webinar one time, or you might just make a video and then inject that video stream for either the entire of the webinar. It was already pre-recorded, or as a way to ensure that the audience gets the absolute maximum best experience. A lot of times what you'll have is what we call the top of the webinar, where the host says, we welcome everybody, and they welcome the guests and whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then the middle part, act 2, which is, the content, the reason you showed up to a webinar, that is actually pre-recorded, and it's just, they click a button and it injects that video right into the video stream. And honestly, if the guest, the presenter, either doesn't appear on camera for their presentation or is wearing the same, shirt or hairstyle or glasses or whatever, but the same background, you wouldn't know that suddenly you switched to something that was recorded a couple of hours earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly webinars where it sounds like someone was on the telephone, those are nearly all recorded ahead of time. Right.
I was
We used to do with On24 and all that stuff. Those were
Mhm.
all like pre-recorded the day before.
Mhm.
And then at the end with the Q&A, that tends to be live. It doesn't have to be, but it tends to be live as well. You can't do any of that on LinkedIn. And so everything has to be live, which means at any second you run the chance that the stream could fail, the session could get torn down, your presenter could have a heart attack, someone's dog goes crazy. I mean, it's just, there's no control over it at all, which is, obviously one of the big advantages, or attractions, I should say, of live events. We like live events because something could go horribly wrong. It's human nature to want to be,
NASCAR crash.
Yeah, right. People watch races for the crashes, right?
Hey, so question.
Yeah.
Let's say that you're doing a LinkedIn Live and you have a video clip you want to show to people. Will that potentially push you out?
Well, potentially, yes. But if it's short,
Yeah.
like, hey, we've got today we're
60
going to be
seconds
talking
or 2
about,
minutes.
today we're going to be talking about a promo video that was created and then the response that it got. So here's the promo video, and then you show them like a 2 or 3
you get away
video.
with something small.
Then I think you're fine with that. But the thing is, because the audience can't be, under the way I interpret the rule, and I'm trying to be as generous to the audience and LinkedIn and live, is that at no point should the audience think that it's live if it's not live.
Got it.
That's right. Right. And then the other thing is, if you're going to do the same webinar over and over, or you've got like a thematically linked series, let's say you're going to do Internet of Things in retail, and you have 3 different webinars. The first one with one speaker and the next one with another speaker, and whatever, and they're sort of like thematically linked, but it's different content. Even that, there's no automation in LinkedIn Live, and you can't do a series. I mean, you can do a series, but as far as LinkedIn is concerned, it's 3 completely separate events, and people can't register for the series. They have to register for each individual event, which means you have to market every event individually. So those are some of the cons. To me, what I see on the client side is an interest in having a mixture. So they'll trade off many of the disadvantages of LinkedIn Live in order to get that very wide reach. Because if you think about it, everyone who's a first connection to you can be invited. It's a very bad invitation system, by the way. Like, there's almost no way for you to slice and dice who you're going to invite from your first level contacts.
Yeah,
I think you can break it down by country or what company they currently work for, but you can't like look for everybody who's in marketing. You can't look for people who are strategists or coaches. You can't look for titles. You can't look for fields that they work in, that kind of stuff. It's very, very limited and very manual. It's like you have to click every single
You
one
do.
of
It's a
So,
hassle.
so if you're mentioning things that you don't like about LinkedIn, would they be lowering? Would they be limiting your reach, even though you have this live?
no,
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 okay,
no. There's no actually. I mean, one of the main advantages is there is no cap on how many people can attend these sessions, as far as we know.
yeah,
I think the other main advantage is, the presentations live on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And so as you're going along, and usually what typically happens over time is, the more people who see you, the more people who see you, the more of an audience you continue to build. So
Yes and no, John. And here's why.
why?
This is astounding, given that LinkedIn was bought several years ago for $26 billion by one of the world's biggest companies, Microsoft. There is no way on LinkedIn to search for a video by name. There's no way to look for a post that includes a video. You can't say
Sure.
only show me posts that have videos, or don't only show me posts that don't have videos. There's no way to search for a video. It basically, did you ever see the Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Yes,
Of course.
of course.
See at the very end where like it's in this enormous warehouse where no one will ever find it, right? I mean, enormous. It's like the size of 75 airplane hangars. That's what a video is once it ends on LinkedIn. Like it has a very brief life in some people's feeds, and then you can never search for it.
It's a needle
Well,
and a
you'd think that the people who brought you Bing would have some search function.
You think, but you cannot, unless you know the exact name of the event, you
Yeah.
cannot ever find that video. You
But
can't
you
find it
know
by
the name of the
topic, or
person. Could you say Dean Way Video?
you might, but I mean, good luck.
Huh.
How many videos are under my name now? Like 100 plus
Many,
already just this
many.
year?
I
You
just
get
found out
the-
I had 300
So-
videos on YouTube.
So, but the fact that you have such a big reach means that you have an opportunity. If you're using a company page instead of
Yeah.
just your personal page, you have those people now in a mailing list, and
Yeah.
you can reach them. Don't obviously never spam anybody and never lie.
No.
But you can, as a professional, reach out to those people and say, "Hey, thanks very much for attending this. If it hasn't happened yet, thanks very much for registering for it, or thanks very much for here's your thing, blah blah blah." And you actually have to post your privacy policy when you want to broadcast a LinkedIn Live event through your company page. Like you have to provide a link to the privacy policy on your own website.
And the TOS too, or just the privacy policy?
It just says privacy policy, but
Okay.
in my case, like the
I
same
put both.
page has the terms of service,
Yeah.
the cookie policy, and the privacy policy.
Ooh,
Yeah.
cookies. That would go good with
Right.
coffee right now.
I
So
know.
yeah, so you will have to provide a link for that, and in that privacy policy, you can say, we do reserve the right to reach out to you from time to time for blah blah blah. But again, LinkedIn, if it got a lot of complaints about you, you would probably go into LinkedIn jail for that. So you have to be
But if they're registering for your event on LinkedIn and they're
Right.
using their personal email instead of a business email, does that have any influence? I mean, because sometimes people complain about spam, even though they're the ones who've registered for something.
Yeah, I mean, at any given time, on any given mail out that I do to my list, all of whom, right, have had experience with me, I still
Right.
get like the odd,
Yeah.
I never signed up for this. Okay, you did, but you don't
You
remember
did,
it. And
but
that's fine,
your
right? And
function is off.
it's
Yeah.
and so, I report this as abuse. I never signed up to hear from this person when I can absolutely prove that you've like actually emailed me about this stuff and wanted
Yeah,
to.
but the best part is
Doesn't
when
matter.
somebody
This is what we live with, when you have
Yeah,
the mail list, right? And
it's always
fine.
there's always somebody who's going to complain about receiving
Yeah.
an email from you.
Well,
I would do it this way. After the event's over and you send your wrap up email with your link to the replay video, and if you're making a blog post about it, like you've got your stuff, and I would at that point have a second opt in for them.
Huh.
That way, I've got them tagged that they like, and so they've double opted in. So
But won't
never
that
mind
reduce
just
because
register
double
for the
opt-ins tend
event
to but
to
double
get the
opt-ins have
stuff.
always reduced that kind of the opt-in in the first place. I mean, double opt-ins, I can't tell you the thousands of people who've never opened a double opt-in email to say, please check your email and confirm that you want to receive this stuff. So most
yeah,
people
but it's not a
give
real.
up.
But what he's talking about, I don't think is a real double opt-in.
Okay, because it's delayed so long.
It's just a second opt-in.
A second.
Yeah.
So they
It's
opted in for the
double
event, and that
Yeah.
gave you an opportunity to communicate with them in a limited channel. And
Right.
in that limited channel, you say, "Hey, by the way, I've got a bunch of like free
Okay.
stuff and interesting stuff related to the topic, and some maybe
Mhm.
not. Here's a web page to do that, and you'll have to opt in or click here, and we'll email you the PDF and the links and all the stuff. So they have to
Right.
register one more
Okay.
time, and then they're done.
Here's
But you're not
probably-
Then
registering.
you've got
You're
them,
not
and there's
registering them in
no,
the second one.
sorry.
So you're not registering in the second one and then saying, please check your email to give us permission yet again. I mean, because that would really be
Yeah.
disastrous. Okay.
Unless you're sending like to folks in Europe, but I mean, I don't really.
Yeah.
I have,
GDPR was so overblown. We
Yeah.
all went into full panic mode.
Yeah.
And then it was like, people were selling courses and consulting and all this stuff. And now it's like, GDPR. Yeah. Okay, fine.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
I think you gave me an idea
Yeah.
what we'll have to talk about.
So basically, I would try to migrate them away from the opt-in they did with you on LinkedIn into an opt-in somewhere else so that you can continue the conversation with them.
Got it.
Yeah.
And
Which
also
they
because
did.
you don't ever want to be in a position where someone thinks that they didn't give you permission to talk to them, and it turns out they did, and they complained, or they somehow really get a bee in their bonnet and go to LinkedIn about it.
Mm.
Right.
And you haven't done anything wrong, but then it's like, and at LinkedIn, you're kind of guilty till proven innocent kind of thing.
Oh, isn't that true of so many places?
So you want to
Facebook,
be
Google.
extra professional and careful with everything on LinkedIn, which is fine. It's kind of the way everything should be anyway.
John,
Whereas your webinar company, if you were using just straight webinar company, would never care about any of these topics. Like they would never, it would never occur to them to give a crap about any of that stuff. But we use LinkedIn for multiple things. We use a webinar service for one thing. So those are the pros and cons, like very wide reach, doesn't cost anything, except you do need a third-party provider. If you use a company page instead of a personal page, you can start, you can get registration details, names and email addresses and stuff for people that you would expect, to get on any webinar service, but you can't get on LinkedIn personal pages. And then sort of the downside is some of the things you might want for more advanced services from a webinar company, like automated webinars, webinars that include content that's not live, and being able to like sell something or say, hey, well, we currently have this on sale for whatever. Like you really should not do that on your LinkedIn Live webinars.
You can't do leggings,
marketing and a growing audience. It's a good option.
I was going to say you can't sell leggings on LinkedIn Live.
No. You can't even sell. You can't like talk about LinkedIn on LinkedIn Live.
But haven't you been talking about LinkedIn?
No, I've been talking about LinkedIn only in the context of LinkedIn versus webinar services. I certainly have not been telling anyone how to use LinkedIn, which is against the rules.
Right.
Except that harvesting of emails thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's not a LinkedIn, right? That's using Zapier and the other stuff. So even then.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's LinkedIn Live as a webinar option. So in some ways, it is the best webinar option available today, and in other ways, it is like not an option at all, depending on what you want to do. All right, that's all I got for today.
John, you said you had to get this. Gave you an idea. What was that?
I'm not quite ready to spring that.
You're not going to reveal
No.
from the evil genius that is
No,
John.
I gotta think through the idea that.
Okay, you think through it first, then you can reveal it to us in a special live event.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe.
As long as it's not our idea about telling people how to use LinkedIn on
LinkedIn.
Which is LinkedIn's like the new Fight Club.
The new Fight Club.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't talk about LinkedIn.
But that means there are no rules in LinkedIn.
Wow.
So that's where
that.
All right. That's it for me today, folks.
Okay.
See you tomorrow.
Wow.